Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Introspection, Grief to Growth. I'm your host, Amy Lindner Lesser, and today I have the pleasure of having Sarah Haas as my guest. Um, Sarah's somebody I met about a year ago through it's a sister mind, which is a mastermind of women who are all in business for ourselves, and we operate mostly from a very cooperative way of doing things. It's the feminine way of doing business. Sarah is a functional health coach and works with women. I'm not going to say midlife because I think I'm past midlife because I don't want to live into 130 plus. Um, but women who are 40s and beyond, to help them optimize their health through food, nutrition, exercise, and mental health. So join me in welcoming Sarah. Welcome to Introspection, the podcast about moving from grief to growth. I'm Amy Lindner Lesser, your host. Introspection started out as a podcast about hospitality, innkeeping, and innkeepers. After about a year, I realized that my life and interests have morphed from hospitality to helping others navigate from grief and loss to growth and living. In this new version of Introspection, I will be talking about my personal experiences with loss, and there are quite a few, what I've learned along the way through my professional training, as well as from my coaching experiences. I'll also be bringing in guests to share interesting ideas. So grab a beverage, find a comfy place, take a deep breath, and listen in.
Hi, Amy. It's so great to be here. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm excited for our conversation and excited to be able to talk to your community and share my story and hope that it touches someone.
I'm sure it will, because you have a fascinating story, just as I guess most of us do. But, I look at you and I see glowing skin, a eyes that are, bright with vitality um, and good health and excitement. And yet I know it hasn't always been that way for you, that you have gone through your share of losses. So could you start by bringing us up to date with some of the losses that you have navigated through, up to but not including the one you're going through at the moment?
Sure,
Listen,
absolutely. Yes, and thank you. That is so sweet of you, all your kind words, and it means a lot to me because like you said, I have not always been in this great place, and I know that you talk all the time about things that we go through, adversities, traumas, losses, shape who we become. And I have always been a huge believer in that because I've seen it in my own life. You know, they always say there's a silver lining and it's become cliche, but things become cliche for a reason. It's because usually there's some truth in it. And I have absolutely seen that in my own life, in that once you can get a little distance, you can maybe not when you're in the thick of it, but once you get through to the other side, you can start looking at it and for the blessings that it gave you and how it shapes you and how it creates you and makes you stronger. And the first thing that I thought I would mention is this is the reason that I got into the work that I do in working with women and women's health came about when my son, I have 2 kids. I'm a single mom with 2 kids. So divorce is one loss in the past. I know a lot of women have experienced that, which, that's profound. But the one I wanted to mention right now is my son, who is now 18, was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes when he was 6. and he was a perfectly healthy, normal 6-year-old, played soccer, he was in kindergarten. I knew nothing about type 1 diabetes, we didn't have any family history, that kinda thing. And when we got that news, it was just devastating because it's not something that can be cured or fixed. It doesn't come on for any reason in your lifestyle. It's not nutrition related or anything. And you also it can't be cured. They don't have a cure for it. So your body just doesn't make insulin and you have to get insulin artificially for the rest of your life 24/7 in order to stay alive. So, as a mom, this was terrifying, and I threw myself into, "Okay, how do I take care of him? How do I make sure that he lives a long, happy, healthy life?" That was my absolute singular focus. But
Especially because at 6 years old, he's not really able to monitor himself or to think, to make the decisions as to what needs to happen. Is
oh,
he
no,
getting enough insulin?
absolutely.
Is he eating what he's supposed to eat? Or did he eat something he shouldn't have eaten? You know, my grandson is deathly allergic to nuts. And at about 5 or 6, he snuck a Reese's peanut butter cup in. And they were at the hospital with, very shortly. Let's try it. Maybe it'll be different. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I joke and say for probably 10 plus years, I was his external pancreas because I had to, the insulin does the work for the pancreas, but the humans have to give the insulin and monitor the blood sugar. It's a 24/7 balancing act. And I was exhausted. I was terrified. I really went through a major period of grief for when you're a parent, you have these ideas in your head of what your kids are gonna be like and what your life is gonna look like, and this was a curveball that we don't usually see any curveballs coming, and it sure did it was completely off my radar. But now that I have some distance and, we I threw myself into learning how to take care of him. And in doing so, I learned about myself and I learned about not just my own nutrition and body movement and that kind of thing, but about my own self care. Because if I was going to be able to do this, I had to have energy. I had to have a clear mind. I had to be able to focus. And I realized that I was a helicopter parent. I was always exhausted. I like to joke that I was holding myself together by Diet Coke and dry shampoo because I was just flying by the seat of my pants, every day just clawing my way to the surface, just trying to survive. I was very much in survival mode. And that was an aha moment for me. Okay, I'm going to have to cut back. I'm going to have to learn to say no. I'm going to have to start delegating. I'm going to have to just let go of some things. Perfectionism, thinking my house always had to be perfect, thinking I always had to look and present myself as put together, all of those things in order to have time to take care of my health, to prepare healthy meals, to monitor his wellness. And also, I learned that all of that is very doable and how to do it, how to easily put together healthy meals that are balanced, that taste good, that kids and families can enjoy, how to have indulgences in moderation, how to make sure you're getting regular movement in every day, how to not overschedule and take on too much. And all of that came together in me realizing that I needed to make a career out of that. And that's what prompted me to go back to school and go to the Institute for Integrative Nutrition to become certified, to become a certified personal trainer, and that has made me who I am today as far as my career.
And I think, though, in addition to that, some of the other losses that you've navigated have fallen into that and have made the discoveries that you made so important to you in maintaining your health. For example, I know that you lost your dad. And so going through that, you still had to take care of yourself and you had to take care of your son and your daughter, who was not ready to be on her own at that point.
Yeah, I lost my dad to lung cancer, and my parents were divorced, and my dad was actually homeless when he was diagnosed. And so I took him in. This was prior to my son's diagnosis. My kids were, I think, 4 and 6 at the time. So I was caring for a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old and a dying parent, and that was a lot. That was a lot, and there was a lot of grief involved, and one of the things that came out of that is I used to be deathly afraid of needles, of any kind of medical setting, and caring for my dad, we had constant doctor's appointments. He had many complications, many hospitalizations. I had to give him shots. So I had to, take care of his medication, see him in the hospital, talk to nurses and doctors regularly. And if it hadn't been for that, I would not have done as nearly as well as I did once my son was diagnosed, because suddenly I have to give him 4 to 6 shots a day. I have to prick his tiny little fingers and draw out blood to check his blood sugar. We have better technology now, so it isn't as basic as it was then, but back then it was very much needles all the time. And he was hospitalized twice, and dealing with all of that, I kind of say now I could be a nurse. I basically have been a nurse, even though I've always been terrified of a medical setting. And we really, even with my son being diagnosed, we did so much with that. We started a 5K, an annual 5K run to raise money for juvenile diabetes research, which my son and I ran together every year, and we raised about $5,000, and we organized walkathons at his school so that we could raise money there, and we went on television to promote diabetes research. We even did some political work, going to visit, like, our state representatives to advocate for federal funding, and my son is empowered by all of that. He doesn't feel hindered at all with his disease. He doesn't remember not having it, and he never talks about it. He doesn't it's not even on his radar, really. He just takes care of it, and it doesn't hold him back. He's a runner now, and he was in the band, and, he's thriving and healthy, and not just physically, but mentally through this disease. It's amazing, his resilience, and I think part of the reason is because we really just leaned in and said, "Okay, there's grief, there's sadness, there's emotions, and what are we gonna do now? Because this is here. This is here, and we can turn it into something good, or we can just stay in that grief forever."
Life quakes or life transitions and the aftershocks that follow are something we all experience. A life quake can stem from the heartbreaking grief that arises from the loss of a loved one, or the disorientation felt when life suddenly shifts due to the loss of a job, relationship, identity, or health challenge. Learning to navigate these transitions with mindfulness, grace, and self-compassion is the key to finding your way back to joy, happiness, and inner peace. Advanced Grief Recovery Method Specialist and Certified Life Transition Coach Amy Lindner Lesser, MSW, expertly supports clients to navigate their life quakes and transitions with warmth, kindness, and grace. Learning to accept support as you navigate your way through the aftershocks is one of the most powerful gifts you can give yourself. Learn more at introspection.com. That's introspection.com.
I think you're making such a great point and argument in favor of the thriver's mindset as opposed to being in a survivor or even a victim mindset. Victim mindset is woe is me, the world is against me. I got diabetes or I got cancer or whatever because everybody hates me. God must hate me too. I'm being punished. In the survivor's mindset, it's more of just, all right, I'll keep going day after day. I think of the tortoise, although I'm going, I put one foot in front of the other. Nothing
Like
excites me.
Eeyore. Like being an Eeyore instead of a Tigger.
Exactly. I'm being attacked by
Yeah.
a bear. And with the thriver's mindset, it's like, okay, I have a challenge and I'm going to take this challenge. And how am I going to have it be both a learning experience and a positive experience? Find that silver lining. And, the silver lining from your dad's illness and living with you was that it prepared you for being able to care for your son. It probably brought you to a point of having a relationship with him. However good or bad or whatever it was a relationship. And it's something that you were able to bring through. And then you've had another major crisis in your life and a major loss.
Yes, when you say the word thrive versus survive, I very much consider myself a thriver because in 2019, I was diagnosed with a stage 2 aggressive breast cancer. So that was right before COVID, and it was in the midst of my career and being a single mom and juggling all these things. There's never good timing for illness, but this one really knocked me on my butt. I was 47 in excellent health and again, no family history. So this just really knocked me back to, of course, a very terrified low point getting the diagnosis. And then I'm faced with chemotherapy. I had 20 rounds of chemotherapy. I had 25 rounds of radiation. I had a double mastectomy with 2 follow-up surgeries. And overall, it took almost 2 years to complete all of these treatments. And here I am on the other side, completely cancer free. I've been cancer free now for 4 years in March. And when people say things like you did at the top of the show, that I'm glowing, that I'm radiating health, that is just music to my ears because when I look back at pictures of myself, I'm have an IV in my arm, I'm completely bald, I'm pale, I'm exhausted, going through so much, and I had to give up a lot of myself during that time. I couldn't work very much. I had to cut way back on work. I could barely exercise, which I'm a person who exercises vigorously, probably 6 days a week. And I lost my physical identity as well. My hair was gone, my breasts were gone. There's scars, there's surgeries. All of that profoundly affected me. And I know now what it's like to start at ground zero and rebuild yourself, which is what I have done. I have been 2 years completely done with treatments, and in that time, I have completely rebuilt my health, and I'm absolutely energetic, vibrant, and thriving. And that also has changed the way that I work with the women that I work with because I had a loss of my own identity, and I know what it's like to not recognize the person that you see in the mirror or to not understand, it's hard to let that sink in that, okay, this is me. I can't believe this is me. And where do I go from here? And how do I become who I want to be?
And I think that's the crux of what happens in navigating loss, because we have an identity, and whether it's loss of health and our physical identity, whether it's the loss of a relationship and how we've defined ourselves in relationship to that other person or the job or the career, it's we don't know who we are anymore. We're lost. And we are just surviving. We walk through life until we're at the point where we're saying, okay, I'm ready. I want to have a life. I want to start laughing again. I want to smile again. And that's not to say that that never happens when you're surviving. It just happens so less frequently.
When you're faced with your own mortality, it really causes you to think about what's really important. You hear people say that, but you can't understand it until you've been there. And you start realizing that all these little things that you're stressing about every day that are detrimental to your health really aren't important. I remember just praying, thinking, God, just get me through this. If I'm dirt poor, I don't care. If I never get my, fitness back or my hair back, I don't care. I just want to be alive. I just want to be with my children, to be with my partner, to be with my mom and my sister and brother and have those relationships and that love. And now I, I won't say that I haven't, gotten sucked back in a little bit. It's just always a work in progress. But I have such a different perspective on life and what's important. It's just incredible. I'm a different person.
Definitely. I mean, I'm thinking that after my husband died, it certainly had me reevaluate what was important. And now every time I worry about something, I'm like, is it going to matter tomorrow? Is it going to matter in a week? How about a month? How about a year? It definitely is not going to matter 5 years down the road. It's not important. There's so little that is so crucial that it makes enough of a difference to really perseverate over. The other thing that you just helped me realize was one of my losses was infertility, that I couldn't get pregnant even with all kinds of stuff. And I was okay. I wanted to be a mother, and it didn't really matter to me. Um, I did not, like other women, go through years and years of infertility treatments. I did a year when insurance would cover it, and then I moved on and we adopted. But I realized that that helped me when I had to have a hysterectomy because of cancer. And I realized that I didn't want the surgery, because who wants surgery? But it didn't affect me because my identity was not in my uterus or my ovaries or my tubes. They never served me. I was like, okay, take them all. And I think the infertility prepared me for that. that that was the silver lining, or one of the silver linings in the infertility. So I worked with a coach in the past, Fabienne Fredrickson, who used to say, um, I believe that everything, the universe is working in my benefit. Everything will turn out okay, that it's rearranging itself for my best interest right now. And what I realized is that both fear and faith require a faith or a belief in something you can't see. So the question is, which would you prefer? Do you prefer to believe in the faith that things are going to work out for you, or the fear that things aren't? And how is it twisting you up inside? I'd rather believe in the faith. So I believe in the universe.
Yeah, and finding that silver lining is important, but I also like to stress that acknowledging and allowing your emotions is just as important, and not stuffing down, not denying those feelings, because human emotions are meant to flow. You're meant to feel them, and sometimes they're not comfortable, they're not enjoyable, we tend to want to avoid them, but through all of my challenges, there's been tears, there's been anger, there's been, "Why me? Why him? Why this? Am I being punished? Was I too vain? Is that why now I'm losing all my hair and my body is changing? You know, did I do something to cause this? Was I bad?" I know that's not true. Realistically, I know that, and it's okay to feel that in the moment, and it's okay. When my son was diagnosed, I had grief, I had tears, constant tears flowing. I would go in my room because I didn't really want him to see me with that much grief, but the tears would just not stop, and it was okay, it was okay.
It's definitely okay. But we do live in a very um, emotion afraid or emotion fearful society, that even if we're comfortable with our emotions and expressing them, we're often made to stuff the emotions because the person who's around us is uncomfortable. And we have to learn to set our boundaries and say, I don't really care if you're not comfortable. This is me. This is how I feel. I need to feel it. And if it makes it easier for you, I'll go in another room, or you can go in another room, but I need to feel it. Because what I have learned, and I'm sure you have also, is that when we don't, they find another way to express. So either people drink, they smoke, they do drugs, they overeat, they rage at not necessarily what they're upset about, but at other people. They may, drive like maniacs. All of those things are emotions that we're holding on to. And it's much healthier to express the emotion.
Absolutely. There's a tendency to want to stuff it down, even if no one else is around, even if it's not being uncomfortable in front of others, it's it's not comfortable to feel pain, sadness, grief, anger, jealousy. Those aren't comfortable emotions. And our society has so many ways of numbing those out. Like you said, drinking alcohol, stuffing it down with food. And the thing is, all those emotions will still live inside you. and keep boiling and bubbling, and they will eventually come out, and it could be in a rage. It Who knows? And it also manifests in our bodies as illness.
Right.
That packing down and holding on, everything that your body feels has a chemical reaction, and chemical reactions change hormones. They have it's a physical thing. Even though, they've proven that stress can cause heart attacks. You know that when you get nervous, your heart rate speeds up, you could sweat. Those are physical reactions because of thoughts and emotions. And by pushing down those emotions, you are causing physical reactions that are harmful in your body, and they will eventually manifest in some way.
Being afraid to express the emotions even to ourselves I still blame it on other people, because we've been given the message that it's not okay. I think the first thing that comes to mind is big boys don't cry. Why not? Who made up that? Why can't men cry? Or, so and so wouldn't want to see you like that. Well, they can close their eyes. But again, it's the messages that we've heard and we've internalized that then we may forget where they came from, but become ours.
Yes, or we have a friend or a parent who sees us struggling, crying, whatever, and offers us something like ice cream or a drink to get rid of the crying, to stop it, to stop that emotion. So if you have a breakup, your girlfriends are going to come over with Ben and Jerry's and wine.
Well, just think of Golden Girls. They were always in the kitchen
Cheesecake.
with the cake.
Exactly. Yes, it's very accepted in our society to push down the emotions, to get over it, to go out and have a binge drinking, to go out and find a sexual partner, whatever it is, to push down those emotions instead of sitting with it, even though it's uncomfortable. And I believe once those emotions are allowed to bubble up and release, then you have freedom, you have joy, and then you can see the silver linings, and you can also become who you're meant to be and be able to share your gifts with the world.
I agree completely. Um, and I also do a lot of talking about self-care and finding silver linings. And you had said at the beginning, you may have to wait. You can't find a silver lining when you're in the midst of something. And that's true. You need some distance to be able to sort of be the bird looking down and get a bird's eye view to say, oh, look, that's happening. And, it can take years. You might see one silver lining and a few years later come up with another one. And that's okay. Just like grief never really goes away. I've talked a lot about grief being like the papers in a file cabinet, in a file folder, in a drawer. And occasionally the drawer opens and you see the file. Okay, I can walk past it. Sometimes you bang into the file and the drawer opens and maybe the file falls out and all the papers fall out. And you have to deal with it. And that's like emotions. You've got to deal with the emotions when they come up and not stuff everything back in without dealing with it, because it's going to pop back up. But know that there are going to be triggers along the way that will set things off again.
And the triggers are a message that you have something that needs attention, something that's unhealed. And we think of them as a negative thing. Oh, I'm getting triggered. I need to find a way not to get triggered. But I believe those are messages from the universe. Those are messages from your inner knowing. When you're triggered, that's when you want to slow down and take a closer look, because there's something there that needs to be dealt with.
In the case of loss, the trigger is also because when you lose a person, especially if you've loved that person, you don't lose the love, you lose the person. or the physical being of that person. And so that's always going to be there. However, when the feelings get triggered of the loss, as you get further away and process more, you can often look at the positives in that relationship. And so, instead of sobbing uncontrollably, you might have a tear or two, and you might also smile at the same time, thinking of something good. We're complex beings, and we can have two very conflicting emotions at the same time.
Yeah, it's that bittersweetness. And you alluded earlier to a loss that I'm dealing with right now, which is I'm about to be an empty nester. My son is going off to college. My daughter's already there, and my son just graduated. And it's very bittersweet because I'm so proud of the kids that I've raised and the humans that they've become and their ability to go out and be independent and to spread their wings and to see more of the world and to experience all the things they're meant to experience. That's the sweet. And the bitter is I don't want to let them go. I'm grieving the teeners, the teenagers that they were, and also all the other phases. I'm thinking a lot about when they were infants, when they were toddlers, when they were elementary school, and they change. They're a completely different person through each stage, and with each stage comes joy, and with each stage comes loss. And that's where I am right now, and I'm just allowing those feelings of grief when they come up, and there's just as much joy and happiness at the same time because I know that they're thriving and that they are exactly where they're meant to be, and I'm so proud that they've made it to this point.
That's a tough one, because a lot of times with the loss and the grief, you don't have the same positive feelings of the situation ending. Um, the nice thing is that you've got 4 years where it's not a complete break, so that you could still grab the hugs and know that the phone calls are there. Um, that
The holidays and summer
right,
vacation where they still live with me.
and hopefully they'll reach out to you if they have an issue, so that it's sort of reminding you like he was living at home, that they're calling mom for advice.
Absolutely.
My kids were preparing me from the day we adopted them. They were both ready to move out as toddlers. My older one was like, I'm getting my own apartment. I'm like, okay, you go ahead. It was not a shock, and it was like, okay, we really can't live together anymore. One of the things that I remember from studying human development is that the toddler years prepare us for the teen years. That the behaviors of the terrible twos, of the no's, are preparing us for saying, okay, it's time. Yes, you need to be independent now. And that's why we're fighting all the time. And
Yes. It makes sense because when they're toddlers, they're creating autonomy just like they are as teens, and my daughter and I experienced that very much so. There was a lot of butting heads, clashing, during the end of her high school years, and I realized that's her preparing herself to leave. That's her separation work, and it's forcing me to do my separation work as well.
it's forcing you to say, you know what, the way you've been behaving to me the past whatever number of months, I'm ready for you to leave. And it does make it a little easier, except one of the things that happens is that we also tend to remember only the good times, that we tend to sort of, I don't think this is a word, but Pollyannacize. We become Pollyannas, that only wonderful things happen. My younger daughter, if you ask her about her dad, she only remembers the good things. She doesn't remember the times that he lost his temper and yelled at her, or, whatever. But she was 11 when he died. And in the 25 years, uh, lots have changed and her memories have faded.
Yeah, and that's almost a blessing to remember the good, because in so many instances of our lives, when it comes to our own internalizing of things, of how we feel about ourselves and our own self-worth and our self-image, we tend to blow up the negative. Any little negative thing that was said to us over the years, we hold that inside, and it's really a blessing to remember the good times that you've had with people, whether they've grown up and moved out or if they've passed on or whatever.
It's very true. Sarah, this has been lovely. I've really enjoyed speaking with you. Um, Tell our viewers and listeners if they would like to get in touch with you, how to do that.
Absolutely. You can find me on my website, which is sarahhaaswellness.com. And I'm also all across social media and on YouTube under Sarah Haas Wellness. And if you go to my website, you can also download my free e-guide for revving up your midlife metabolism. So it has lots of juicy tips in there to rev up your metabolism and to get your body healthier and be able to release weight and all that good stuff. I always have giveaways and I always have excellent offers. And sometimes I do free challenges like Breakup with Sugar Challenge. And I also do one on one work with clients as well as group coaching. So there's lots of opportunities for people that are ready to jump in and get healthy mind, body, and spirit.
Well, thank you for the invitation and thank you for your time. And for our viewers and listeners, thanks for listening in. We'll see you the next time. Love you. Bye. If you liked what you heard on this podcast and want to hear more, please follow us and tell your friends. You can also find me on Facebook at Amy Lindner Lesser, Grief to Growth Life Coaching, and on LinkedIn at Amy Lindner Lesser. Thanks